The trading station floated peacefully in the Valorian sector, its metal arms extending like a mechanical flower into the darkness of space. Hundreds of ships moved around it, carrying goods from one world to another. The aliens who worked there had seen this routine for decades. Nothing ever changed. Nothing ever went wrong. Then the alarm started screaming. Captain Velros jumped from his chair on the station's command deck. His blue skin turned pale as he stared at the main screen. Every sensor was showing the same impossible reading. Something was tearing through space itself, coming straight toward them. "What is that?" Velros whispered. The other aliens in the command center had no answer. They watched as reality split open like a wound. Energy crackled and burned. Then emerging from the tear in space came a ship. It was massive. Bigger than any merchant vessel. Bigger than most military cruisers. The ship's hull was dark gray, covered in scorch marks and deep gouges. Parts of it looked melted. Other sections were held together with what appeared to be welded patches. It looked like something that had fought through hell itself. The ship drifted to a stop, silent and still. The tear in space behind it sealed shut with a flash of light. "Scan it," Velros ordered, his voice shaking. The station's computers worked quickly. The results made no sense. The ship's design didn't match anything in the Concordat database. Its power signature was off the charts. The materials used in its construction were primitive, yet somehow it generated more energy than ships twice its size. Within minutes, the Concordat defense fleet arrived. 12 warships surrounded the strange vessel, their weapons charged and ready. The fleet commander opened a communication channel that broadcast on every known frequency. "Unknown vessel, you have entered Concordat space without authorization. Identify yourself immediately or we will open fire. Silence." The scarred ship hung in space like a ghost. The fleet commander prepared to give the order to attack. Then a voice crackled through the speakers. It was rough, tired, but unmistakably alive. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth spaceship Indomitable. We request sanctuary." The command center went quiet. Velros felt his blood run cold. Earth. He knew that name. Every student in the Concordat learned about it in history class. 400 years ago, scout ships had discovered a primitive species on a blue planet at the galaxy's edge. The species called themselves humans. The Concordat Council had decided they were too aggressive, too violent to join civilized space. Earth's entire sector had been quarantined and forgotten. Everyone assumed the humans had died out centuries ago. "This is impossible," Velros muttered. Earth was quarantined. They didn't have faster-than-light travel. They couldn't have survived. Commander Chen's voice came through again, stronger this time. "We survived. We built our own ships. We colonized our own worlds, and for the last 3 years, we've been fighting something that wants to consume everything in its path. It's following us. You have maybe 72 hours before it arrives here." The fleet commander's face appeared on the screen. He was a Cantharian, a species known for their military tradition. His reptilian features showed doubt and suspicion. "If what you say is true, human, then you have led an enemy to our doorstep." "If we hadn't come here," Chen replied, "it would have found you anyway. At least now you have a warning. At least now you have us. And what good are you?" the commander asked. "Your ship is barely holding together." There was a pause. When Chen spoke again, her voice was hard as steel. "We're the ones who survived." The Concordat Council was summoned immediately. Representatives from dozens of species gathered on Axis Prime, the massive ring world that served as the capital of civilized space. They watched the footage from Valorian sector and argued for hours. Some wanted to destroy the human ship immediately. Others wanted to interrogate the crew and learn their secrets. A few, very few, suggested listening to the human warning. Ambassador Thelnara belonged to the last group. She was Valorian, a species known for their diplomatic skills and long memories. She studied the image of the battered human warship and felt something she rarely experienced: curiosity mixed with fear. "We made a mistake 400 years ago," she said to the council. "We judged these humans without truly understanding them. They survived our abandonment. They built an interstellar civilization alone, and now they come to us for help, warning us of danger. The least we can do is listen," the council voted. By a narrow margin, they agreed to let Commander Chen and a small delegation come to Axis Prime to present their case. 3 days later, Chen stood before the council. She was shorter than most aliens in the room, her body compact and muscular. Her dark hair was cut short, and her face showed the lines of someone who had seen too much. She wore a uniform that was faded and patched, but she stood straight and proud. She told them humanity's story, how they had developed their own faster-than-light drive through trial and error, losing hundreds of test pilots in the process, how they had colonized 47 worlds in 4 centuries, how they had built a civilization based on determination and refusal to quit. Then she told them about the Devourers, the council chamber filled with images from human records, massive organic ships that consumed everything in their path, planets stripped of all life, entire star systems left as empty husks, and humanity fighting back with everything they had, buying time for evacuations with their lives. 46 of our worlds are gone, Chen said quietly. Billions of our people are dead. My ship is the last surviving vessel from a fleet of 3,000. We fought for 3 years. We learned how they think, how they attack, how they adapt, and we learned something else. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species that had abandoned humanity centuries ago. We learned that running isn't enough. We learned that fighting conventionally doesn't work. We learned that the only way to beat them is to do things that seem crazy, things that seem impossible, things that no sane species would attempt. And what makes you think we need such madness? Asked a council member. Chen smiled, but there was no humor in it. Because they're already here, the chamber's alarms erupted. On every screen, the same image appeared. At the edge of the Valorian sector, space was turning black. Not the normal black of the void, but a writhing, living darkness that consumed light itself. The Devourers had arrived, and they were hungry. The Concordat Defense Fleet moved into position at the edge of the Valorian sector. Admiral Krevthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the darkness spread across the stars. He had fought in 3 wars during his long life, but he had never seen anything like this. Beside him, his tactical officer studied the sensor readings. Sir, the energy signatures don't make sense. That darkness is eating everything. Light, radiation, even the quantum foam of space itself. How long until it reaches the inhabited zones? Krevthar asked. 70 hours. Maybe less if it accelerates. The Admiral's claws tapped against his command chair. Behind him, a door opened. Commander Chen walked onto the bridge, accompanied by Ambassador Thel Nara. The Council had given Chen limited access to military facilities, though many admirals protested. Krevthar was not one of them. He had read the human combat records. He recognized a warrior when he saw one. Commander, he said, nodding, your enemy does not wait. They never do, Chen replied. She moved to the tactical display and studied it. You're setting up a defensive line here at the sector's edge. Energy weapons at maximum range. Standard Concordat doctrine. It has served us well for 800 years, Krevthar said. It won't work against them. The tactical officer bristled. Our weapons can destroy a moon. Our shields can withstand a supernova's blast. What makes you think? Because we tried that, Chen interrupted. At New Shanghai we had a defensive platform that could vaporize a planet. The Devourers absorbed the energy and used it to grow stronger. At New Adelaide we held them off for 6 months with the best shields human technology could create. They learned how our shields worked and developed a way to pass right through them. She pulled up images from human battles. The aliens on the bridge watched in silence. They saw human ships fighting with a ferocity that shocked them. When human vessels took damage, they didn't retreat. They accelerated forward, ramming into enemy ships. When their weapons ran out, human marines boarded enemy vessels and fought hand-to-hand inside alien corridors. You fight like savages, the tactical officer said. Chen turned to him slowly. We fight like people who have nothing left to lose. There's a difference. Admiral Krevthar raised a hand for silence. Tell me, Commander, how did you survive when everyone else did not? Chen was quiet for a moment. Her eyes looked distant, seeing things that haunted her. We learned to fight dirty. We learned that the Devourers have a hive mind, a psychic network that connects all their ships and organisms. We learned that if you disrupt that network even for a moment, they become confused. And we learned that they don't understand sacrifice. Want to know, what do you mean? Thelnara asked. They consume to survive. They grow to expand. They can't understand why a species would destroy itself to hurt them. So when we started using our ships as bombs, when we started overloading our reactors and flying into their formations, they didn't know how to respond. It bought us time. Not much, but enough to evacuate some people. Enough to let the Indomitable escape. The bridge was silent. These aliens had built a civilization on logic and preservation. The idea of deliberately destroying yourself was alien to them. How many humans remain? Krefthar asked quietly. We don't know. The Indomitable lost contact with all our colonies. There might be survivors hiding in deep space or in unexplored systems. Or we might be the last. 317 people on a dying ship. Chen pulled up another file. This is what we call Project Lighthouse. It's our final plan. But I need your help to make it work. She explained the technical details. The science officers listened with growing alarm. What Chen proposed violated several laws of physics that the Concordat considered absolute. It required technology they had banned centuries ago as too dangerous, and it demanded a level of risk that no sane commander would accept. This is madness, the tactical officer said. Even if it worked, your ship would be destroyed. Everyone on board would die. Yes, Chen said simply, and you would do this? To stop them? To save lives? Yes. Every single person on the Indomitable already volunteered. Chen looked around the bridge. That's something else you need to understand about humans. We don't leave our people behind. We don't abandon our allies, and we don't go quietly into the dark. Over the next 2 days, the Concordat prepared their defenses. Chen offered tactical advice that was mostly ignored. The alien commanders were confident in their superior technology. They had ships with weapons humanity could only dream of. They had shields that could stop anything. They had 800 years of military tradition. Chen watched them prepare and said nothing. She had seen this confidence before, on human faces, right before the Devourers tore through their defenses. Ambassador Thelnara spent time aboard the Indomitable during those 2 days. She wanted to understand these humans better. What she found surprised her. The ship was a mess. Corridors were patched with welded metal. The walls were covered in scorch marks. The crew quarters were cramped and uncomfortable. But everywhere she went, she saw humans working. Engineers repaired systems with tools that looked primitive. Medical staff treated injuries with improvised equipment. Marines cleaned weapons and joked with each other, their laughter echoing through the damaged halls. She found Chen in the ship's small observation deck, staring out at the stars. Your people seem happy, Thelnara said. Despite everything. Chen smiled slightly. That's how we cope. We joke, we laugh. We pretend everything is fine until we can make it fine. She paused. One of our old sayings is humanity fuck yeah. It's crude, but it means something. It means we don't quit. We don't give up. Even when the universe tells us we should. Is that why you fight so hard? Pride? No, Chen said quietly. It's because of what we'll lose if we don't. I had a daughter. She was 7 years old when New Adelaide fell. She liked drawing pictures of stars. She wanted to be an explorer when she grew up. Her voice cracked slightly. The Devourers don't care about dreams. They don't care about children or art or love. They just consume. So we fight. Not because we're proud. Because we're angry. Thelnara understood then. Humanity wasn't crazy. They were desperate. And desperate people were the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. On the 3rd day, the sensors detected movement in the darkness. Shapes began to emerge. They were organic, massive creatures that looked like a nightmare combination of ship and living thing. Tentacles stretched for kilometers, mouths large enough to swallow moons gaped in the void, and behind them came millions more, a swarm that blotted out the stars. The Concordat defense fleet powered up their weapons. Every ship locked onto targets. Admiral Krefthar gave the order. All ships open fire. The darkness lit up with energy beams. Missiles streaked through space. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. For a moment it seemed to work. Devourer creatures died by the dozens, their massive bodies torn apart. Then the swarm learned. The Devourers began to shift and change. Their bodies absorbed the energy weapons. Their flesh adapted to resist the missiles. And they kept coming, faster now, hungrier. Within the first hour, 12 Concordat ships were gone. Consumed by the darkness, turned into fuel for the swarm. Admiral Krefthar watched his fleet dying and realized the truth. The humans had been right. Conventional warfare wouldn't save them. He opened a channel to the Indomitable. Commander Chen, I am giving you tactical command of the defense. Tell us how to fight. Chen appeared on the screen. Behind her, the human crew was already moving to battle stations. Finally, she said. Now I'll show you what humans do best, and what is that? Chen's smile was fierce and wild. We show the monsters why they should be afraid of us. Commander Chen stood in the Concordat war room surrounded by alien officers who didn't trust her. Maps of the Valorian sector covered the walls. Red markers showed where Devourer forces were advancing. Blue markers showed the dwindling Concordat defense positions. "We need to change tactics immediately," Chen said, her voice cutting through the murmuring officers. "Your traditional formations aren't working." A Valorian admiral crossed his forearms. "Our tactics have maintained peace for 8 centuries. Perhaps you simply don't understand proper military doctrine." Chen pulled up footage from the last engagement. "Your ships move in perfect geometric patterns, beautiful, precise, and completely predictable. The Devourers have already learned your movement algorithms. They know where you'll be before you get there." She changed the display to show human battle tactics. The alien officers watched with barely concealed disgust. Human ships moved erratically, breaking formation constantly. They used debris as cover. They fired from unexpected angles. Sometimes they simply charged straight at the enemy with no apparent plan. "This is chaos," another admiral protested. "There's no coordination, no strategy." "That's the point," Chen replied. "You can't predict chaos. Neither can they. My people have a saying, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So we stopped making complicated plans. We adapted. We improvised. We made it up as we went." Admiral Krevthar studied the footage carefully. Unlike the others, he saw the pattern beneath the chaos. Human ships seemed random, but they were actually covering each other, creating overlapping fields of fire, drawing enemies into traps. It was crude compared to Concordat precision, but it was effective. "Show us your weapons," he ordered. Chen nodded and activated another display. The aliens watched as humans demonstrated their arsenal. Kinetic kill vehicles that accelerated to near light speed using simple physics. Fusion warheads that violated 3 Concordat treaties. Boarding torpedoes that were essentially armored boxes full of Marines with guns. "These weapons are primitive," a weapons officer scoffed. "Why use kinetic projectiles when energy weapons are far more efficient?" "Because kinetic weapons are simple," Chen explained. "They don't require exotic materials. They can't be jammed or disrupted. And when a tungsten rod hits something at a fraction of light speed, it doesn't matter how advanced your shields are. Conservation of momentum is the same everywhere in the universe." She pulled up specifications for the Indomitable itself. The alien engineers leaned forward, fascinated despite themselves. "Your ship should have been destroyed weeks ago," one of them said. "These damage reports show you've lost primary power 3 times. Your hull has been breached in 47 places. How are you still flying?" Chen smiled slightly. "Redundancy. Every critical system on a human ship has a backup. Every backup has a backup. We can run main engines on auxiliary power. We can seal breaches with whatever materials we have. Our engineers are trained to fix things with spare parts and hope." She called up an engineer from the Indomitable. His name was Marcus, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. His uniform was covered in grease and burn marks. "Marcus, show them the engine room repairs," Chen said. The camera switched to show the Indomitable's engine room. The alien stared in horror. Critical systems were held together with welded plates. Power conduits were rerouted using what appeared to be spare cable and determination. One of the main reactor housings had a dent in it that someone had simply worked around. "This is a disaster waiting to happen," an alien engineer said. Marcus laughed. "It's been a disaster for 3 years. We're just too stubborn to admit it." He patted a console that was held together with metal straps.
"See, the difference between your ships and ours is simple.
Your ships are built to be perfect. Ours are built to survive." Over the next hours, Chen worked with the few officers willing to listen. She taught them about irregular warfare, about using obstacles instead of fighting in open space, about targeting enemy command and control instead of trying to destroy every ship, about sacrifice. That last part was the hardest. "You're asking our captains to deliberately ram their ships into enemy vessels," a senior officer said. "That's suicide." "It's a choice," Chen corrected. On every human ship that went down fighting, the crew had escape pods. They could have run, but they chose to stay. They chose to make their deaths mean something. Why would anyone make that choice? Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but fierce. "Because sometimes one person dying saves 100. Because sometimes holding the line for 5 more minutes means civilians get away. Because we understand that we're not more important than everyone else." Ambassador Thelnara had been listening quietly. Now she spoke up. The Concordat has forgotten how to make hard choices. We've had peace for so long that we've forgotten what it costs. These humans remember. That evening, Chen gathered her crew on the Indomitable's main deck. 317 people crowded into a space meant for 200. They were tired, wounded, and far from home. But when Chen stood before them, they stood at attention. "I won't lie to you," she began. "The Concordat doesn't trust us. Half their admirals think we're savages. The other half think we're liars. But Admiral Krevthar has given us a chance. He's letting us fight our way." A Marine in the back called out, "So we're going to do something stupid?" Chen grinned. "Oh, we're going to do something incredibly stupid." Laughter rippled through the crew. "Project Lighthouse is a go. The Concordat scientists say it's impossible. Their engineers say it will never work. Their tacticians say no one would be crazy enough to try it. Good thing we're not them," someone else shouted. "Good thing we're us," Chen agreed. "I need volunteers. This is a one-way trip. Project Lighthouse means turning the Indomitable into a weapon. It means flying into the heart of the swarm. It means none of us are coming back." She expected some hesitation, some doubt. Instead, every single hand went up. 317 hands. Not a single person stepped back. Chen felt tears sting her eyes but didn't let them fall. "I'm proud to serve with you. All of you. Humanity might be on its last legs, but we're going to go out making the galaxy remember us." A young officer, barely 20 years old, spoke up. "Ma'am, do you think we'll win?" Chen considered lying, then decided against it. "These people deserved the truth. I think we'll hurt them. I think we'll slow them down. I think we'll give the Concordat time to evacuate civilians. And I think billions of people will live because of what we're about to do. Is that winning? Maybe not. But it's enough," the crew cheered. Not because they wanted to die, but because they finally had a chance to make their deaths count. Later that night, Chen stood alone in her quarters. She pulled out a worn photograph from her pocket. A little girl with dark hair and a bright smile. Her daughter. Her everything. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you," she whispered to the picture. "But I can save others like you. That has to be enough. That has to matter." A knock on her door. Thelnara entered quietly. The alien ambassador had spent days with the humans now, learning their ways. She sat down across from Chen. "Your people are remarkable," Thelnara said. "But I must ask, are you not afraid?" "Terrified," Chen admitted. "Every single day. Fear is what keeps us alive. But we don't let it control us. We acknowledge it and move forward anyway. The Concordat has much to learn from humanity." Chen looked up. "Will we be remembered? After this is over, will anyone know we tried?" Thelnara reached across and took Chen's hand. It was a gesture of connection across species. "I will make certain of it. The galaxy abandoned you once. We won't make that mistake again. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten." The next morning, the Devourers advanced again. They had consumed half the outer system already. Thousands of their ships filled the void, blocking out the light of distant stars. The Concordat fleet prepared for battle, but this time things were different. Some captains had listened to Chen's advice. Some ships broke formation and started fighting like humans, aggressively, unpredictably, desperately. And in the center of the fleet, the Indomitable began charging its reactor. Project Lighthouse was starting. The human crew worked frantically, pushing their dying ship past every safety limit. They were building a bomb. The biggest, most dangerous bomb humanity had ever conceived. Admiral Krevthar watched from his flagship as the Devourers drew closer. He opened a channel to Chen. "Are you certain about this, Commander?" Chen appeared on the screen. Behind her, alarms were blaring. "No, Admiral, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's what humans do best." "Then show us," Krevthar said quietly. "Show us what it means to be human." Chen saluted. "It's been an honor, Admiral. All ships, this is Indomitable. We're going in. Follow us if you dare." The battered human warship turned toward the swarm. Its engines flared to life one last time, and Commander Sarah Chen led her crew toward death and legend. The Indomitable accelerated toward the Devourer swarm like a bullet aimed at the heart of darkness. Alarms screamed throughout the ship as systems pushed past their breaking points. In the engine room, human engineers worked frantically to keep the reactor from exploding too soon. "Reactor at 130%, Marcus shouted over the noise. "We've got maybe 20 minutes before it goes critical." "Make it 30, Chen ordered from the bridge. We need to get deeper into the swarm. Behind the Indomitable, the Concordate fleet watched in stunned silence. Then Admiral Krevthar's voice cut through the command channel. All ships follow the human vessel. Do not let them go alone. One by one, Concordate warships broke formation and followed. Not all of them. Some captains refused to abandon traditional tactics. But enough. Enough to matter. The first wave of devourers met them head-on. These creatures were massive, each one the size of a small moon. Their bodies were organic nightmares of tentacles and teeth and weapons that grew from living flesh. They had consumed entire worlds. They had destroyed humanity's colonies. They had never known defeat. Chen watched them approach and smiled coldly. Weapons free. Target their command nodes. The Indomitable's guns opened fire. Kinetic rounds streaked through space at impossible speeds. Fusion warheads detonated in brilliant flashes. The old, battered human ship fought like a wounded animal. Vicious, desperate, and completely without mercy. A devourer creature wrapped tentacles around the Indomitable's hull. Immediately, boarding pods launched from inside the ship. Human Marines, wearing armor that was patched and repaired 100 times, crashed into the alien flesh and started cutting their way inside. Sergeant Williams led his squad through passages of living tissue. The Devourer's interior was hot and wet, pulsing with alien life. His team moved quickly, placing charges on anything that looked important. "This is disgusting," one of his Marines said, cutting through what might have been an artery. Black liquid sprayed everywhere. "You should see what we had for lunch," Williams joked. His squad laughed despite everything. That was the human way. Laugh at death. Make jokes in hell. Charges set. Everyone out. They ran back toward their boarding pod as the Devourer realized what was happening. The creature's immune system activated. Living antibodies, each one the size of a person, swarmed toward the human intruders. Williams's squad fought while running. Bullets tore through alien flesh. Grenades exploded in enclosed spaces. One Marine fell, overwhelmed by antibodies. Williams wanted to go back for him, but there was no time. The charges were counting down. They reached the pod with seconds to spare. As it launched back toward the Indomitable, the Devourer creature exploded from the inside. The tentacles released their grip on the human ship. "Good work, Sergeant," Chen said over the radio. "But we've lost the port weapons array. Can we fix it?" "Not in time. We're down to 60% combat capability. 60% is more than zero, ma'am." The battle intensified. More Devourer ships poured in from every direction. The Concordate vessels fought bravely, but they were learning a harsh lesson. The enemy adapted to everything. Every tactic worked once, maybe twice, then became useless. A Valorian destroyer tried to maintain proper defensive formation. The Devourers predicted its movements and cut it apart in seconds. An entire crew of 300 aliens died before they could even retreat. Admiral Krevthar watched in horror from his flagship. His species had fought wars before, but nothing like this. The enemy didn't want territory. They didn't want resources. They just wanted to consume everything. "Sir, we're losing ships too quickly," his tactical officer reported. "We need to fall back and regroup." Krevthar looked at the Indomitable pushing deeper into the swarm. The human ship was falling apart. Pieces of its hull were missing. Half its weapons were gone. But it kept fighting. It never stopped. It never retreated. "No," Krevthar said quietly. "No more retreating. All ships attack pattern Human 7. Forget the formations. Forget the doctrine. Just hurt them." His officers stared at him. Attack pattern Human 7 was barely organized chaos. It violated every principle of concordant military theory. "Sir, that's an order," Krevthar finished. "The humans are right. Sometimes you have to fight dirty to survive." The Concordate fleet abandoned centuries of tradition and started fighting like humans. Ships dodged erratically. Captains made split-second decisions instead of waiting for command approval. When weapons ran out, they rammed. When shields failed, they kept fighting anyway. The Devourers began to struggle. Their hive mind was built on prediction and adaptation, but humans didn't follow patterns. Humans did stupid, illogical things that shouldn't work but somehow did, and now the aliens were learning to fight the same way. On the Indomitable, Chen checked the reactor status. 15 minutes to critical mass. Are we in position? Her navigator checked the sensors. Almost, Commander. We need to get past that cluster of command ships ahead. Chen looked at the screen. A dozen massive Devourer vessels blocked their path. Each one was protected by hundreds of smaller creatures. There was no way through. Then we go through anyway, she said. All power to engines. Weapons keep firing until the guns melt. Everyone else, brace for impact. The Indomitable surged forward. Its damaged engines screamed in protest. Warning lights flashed across every console. The ship was literally shaking itself apart. They hit the first line of Devourer ships at ramming speed. The collision tore away more of the Indomitable's hull. The crew was thrown around like toys. But they kept going. Ambassador Thelnara had insisted on staying aboard for the final battle. She picked herself up from the deck, bleeding from a cut on her head. Around her, humans were already back at their stations working despite injuries. "How can you keep going?" she asked a young officer whose arm was clearly broken. The officer just grinned. "Because we're not dead yet, ma'am. And while we're alive, we fight." The Indomitable broke through the defensive line. Ahead of them was the center of the swarm, a massive planet-sized creature that served as the Devourer's central mind. This was the heart of the enemy. Destroy it and the entire swarm would be disrupted. "Reactor at 180%, Marcus reported. His voice was calm despite the impossible numbers. 5 minutes to detonation. "No way to stop it now." Chen opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Commander Chen to all Concordate ships. Pull back to minimum safe distance. What comes next is going to be big." "What about you?" Admiral Krevthar asked. "We're exactly where we need to be." Chen looked around her bridge. Her crew, her family. "It's been an honor serving with you all. Humanity might end today, but we're taking these things with us." The crew stood at attention, saluting their commander one last time. Chen returned the salute, then turned to Thelnara. "Ambassador, there's an escape pod with your name on it. Go, tell them what happened here. Tell them we didn't surrender." Thelnara had tears running down her face. "I will, I promise. The galaxy will remember." The ambassador ran toward the escape pod bay. Behind her, she heard Chen giving her final orders. "All hands abandon ship. I repeat, all hands abandon ship. This is not a request. That's an order. Anyone still aboard in 2 minutes is getting court-martialed." "You can't court-martial us if we're dead, ma'am," someone shouted back. Nobody moved toward the escape pods. Chen laughed. Of course they weren't leaving. She hadn't expected them to. These were humans. Stubborn, crazy, beautiful humans who refused to abandon their posts. "Fine," she said. "Then let's finish this together. Marcus, give me everything the reactor has left." "Aye, Commander. Going to maximum." The Indomitable accelerated one last time, straight toward the Devourer's central mind. The massive creature tried to defend itself, but it was too late. The battered human ship crashed into its surface and kept going, drilling deep into alien flesh. Chen counted down the seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2. She thought of her daughter one last time. Hoped that somewhere, somehow, there were other humans who survived. Hoped that they would hear this story and know that their species never gave up. 1. The Indomitable's reactor went critical. But this wasn't a normal explosion. Project Lighthouse converted all that energy into a quantum resonance wave, specifically tuned to disrupt psychic networks. The wave expanded outward at the speed of light, tearing through the Devourer's hive mind. The effect was instantaneous. Every Devourer creature in the system suddenly lost connection with the swarm. They stopped coordinating. They stopped adapting. They became confused, scared animals instead of parts of a greater intelligence. And the Concordate fleet, finally fighting an enemy that couldn't predict their moves, tore through them. Admiral Krevthar watched the explosion bloom like a new star. He watched the Devourers fall into chaos, and he whispered a prayer for the humans who had shown them how to win. "They held the line," he said quietly. "They gave us victory. But the battle wasn't over yet. There were still thousands of Devourer creatures to destroy, still hours of fighting ahead. The difference was now they could be beaten. Now there was hope." The battle lasted 16 more hours. 16 hours of brutal, exhausting combat as the Concordate fleet hunted down every remaining Devourer creature in the Valorian sector. Without their hive mind coordination, the creatures fought poorly. They were dangerous individually, but no longer unstoppable. Admiral Krevthar commanded from his flagship, his voice hoarse from giving orders. Around him, his officers worked with a new determination. They had learned something important from the humans. Sometimes survival required more than strategy. Sometimes it required sacrifice. When the last Devourer ship was destroyed, the fleet counted its losses. 40% of the Concordate vessels were gone. Thousands of aliens had died. But they had won. The sector was saved. Billions of civilians had survived, and humanity had paid the ultimate price for that victory. Krevthar ordered a search of the battlefield. Teams looked through debris fields, hoping to find survivors from the Indomitable. They found pieces of the ship scattered across thousands of kilometers. They found bodies floating in space, still at their stations, but they found no life. Ambassador Thelnara's escape pod was recovered. She was the only survivor from the human ship. When they brought her aboard the flagship, she was still crying. They stayed, she told Krevthar. Every single one of them. I begged them to evacuate. Chen ordered them to leave. But they stayed anyway. They wanted to finish it together. The admiral bowed his head. They were warriors. The finest I have ever seen. News of the battle spread quickly through concorded space. At first, many didn't believe it. Humans, the species they had abandoned centuries ago, had saved them? Impossible. But the evidence was overwhelming. Combat footage showed the Indomitable's final charge. Sensor logs recorded the quantum resonance weapon. And Ambassador Thelnara told everyone who would listen about human courage. The Concordate Council convened again. This time there was no debate about humanity. The vote was unanimous. The quarantine on Earth sector is hereby lifted, the council leader announced. Any surviving human colonies will be welcomed into the Concordate with full membership status. We owe them a debt we can never repay. Search ships were dispatched immediately to explore the regions where humans had colonized. Most worlds they found were empty, consumed by the devourers or evacuated. But then 3 weeks after the battle, a scout ship detected something in a dense nebula at the edge of former human space. A colony. Hidden and protected by natural interference that blocked sensors, the world was called New Terra, and it held 3 billion human survivors. When Concordate ships arrived, the humans were ready to fight. They had heard nothing from the rest of their species for years. They assumed everyone else was dead. Their defenses powered up, their ancient weapons aimed at the alien visitors. Then Ambassador Thelnara's message played on every screen across New Terra. People of Earth and its colonies. I am Ambassador Thelnara of the Concordate. I come with news of the UESS Indomitable and Commander Sarah Chen. She told them everything. About the battle. About the sacrifice. About how 317 humans had held the line and saved billions of alien lives. She told them that humanity was no longer alone. That the galaxy finally understood what humans were capable of. The planetary governor of New Terra, an elderly woman named Sarah Chen Jr., listened to the message with tears streaming down her face. That was my mother, she whispered. She got out. She made it to safety, and then she went back to fight. The Concordate offered everything to the surviving humans. Technology, resources, ships, worlds. But what they wanted most was simple recognition. They wanted the galaxy to remember what had happened. 6 months later, a memorial was unveiled in the Valorian sector, exactly where the Indomitable had made its final stand. The monument was massive, visible from anywhere in the system. It showed a human warship, battered and broken, still flying forward into darkness. At the base of the monument, an inscription was carved in both human and concordate languages. Here, 317 humans held the line. They fought not for glory or conquest, but to save lives. They knew they would die. They went anyway. The galaxy forgot humanity once. We will never forget again. The dedication ceremony was attended by representatives from every concordate species. Admiral Krevthar gave the main speech, his old warrior's voice carrying across the crowd. I have fought in many battles, he said. I have known many brave soldiers. But I never witnessed anything like what the humans showed us. They taught us that sometimes the only way to win is to risk everything. They taught us that sacrifice has meaning. They taught us what it means to refuse surrender. He paused, looking up at the monument. Commander Chen told me that humans have a saying, humanity, fuck yeah. I asked her what it meant. She said it meant humans don't quit. They don't give up, even when the universe tells them they should. He lowered his head. Today we honor that spirit. Today the galaxy says humanity, fuck yeah. The crowd erupted in cheers. Humans and aliens alike shouted the phrase. It became a battle cry. A promise. A reminder of what one species had done to save them all. New Terra was offered a seat on the Concordate Council. Sarah Chen Jr. accepted on behalf of all surviving humans. Her first act was to establish the Chen Memorial Fleet. human ships built with combined human and concordate technology. They would patrol the galaxy's edge, watching for any return of the Devourers. The first ship of that fleet was commissioned a year after the battle. It was the largest, most advanced warship ever built. Human engineers designed it to be tough and adaptable. Concordate scientists filled it with the best weapons and shields available. Together they created something unprecedented. At the launch ceremony, Admiral Krevthar, now retired but present as a guest of honor, pulled a cloth from the ship's nameplate, UESS Sarah Chen. The crowd went silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Soon thousands of beings from dozens of species were applauding. Some were crying. All were remembering. The new captain of the Sarah Chen was a young human woman named Williams. Her father had been Sergeant Williams, who died aboard the Indomitable. She stood at attention as the ship was officially transferred to her command. "This ship carries a heavy name," she told her crew, both human and alien. "My father died aboard the original Indomitable. So did 316 other people who refused to surrender. We can never replace them. But we can honor them. We can make sure their sacrifice meant something." She looked around at the mixed crew, humans, Valorians, Cantharians, and a dozen other species serving together. The galaxy thought humans were too violent to join them. They were right in a way. We are violent. We are aggressive. We are stubborn and crazy and willing to do impossible things. But we're also loyal. We're also brave. And we never ever abandon our friends. The crew cheered, human and alien voices mixing together. "The Devourers are still out there," Williams continued, "beyond our space in the dark between galaxies. Someday they might come back, and when they do, we'll be ready. Not just humans. All of us, together." She saluted the memorial visible through the ship's windows. "Commander Chen, Sergeant Williams, and all the crew of the Indomitable, we have the watch. You can rest now. We won't let you down." The Sarah Chen powered up its engines and began its patrol route. Behind it, the memorial to the Indomitable stood silent guard over the sector. Years passed. The Concordate changed, influenced by human philosophy. Military doctrine was rewritten to include human tactics. Engineering standards incorporated human redundancy and durability. Cultural exchanges brought human art, music, and literature to alien worlds. And humans learned from the aliens, too. They gained access to technologies that would have taken them centuries to develop alone. They learned diplomacy and patience. They discovered that the galaxy was full of wonders worth protecting. But they never forgot who they were. Human warships still carried the names of fallen heroes. Human marines still joked before battle. Human engineers still fixed impossible problems with spare parts and determination. A human saying spread throughout the Concordate: "We don't fight to win. We fight so the enemy loses." It became a core principle of combined military strategy. 10 years after the Battle of Valorian Sector, sensors detected another Devourer swarm approaching from deep space. This time the response was different. This time, a combined fleet of human and alien ships moved to intercept. Hundreds of vessels representing every major species in the Concordate. Captain Williams commanded the Sarah Chen at the fleet's vanguard. She opened a channel to all ships, human and alien. "All vessels, this is the Sarah Chen. 10 years ago, my father and 316 others showed the galaxy what humans could do. They showed you that sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to lose. Today, we fight together. Today, we show these things why they should have stayed in the dark." The combined fleet engaged the Devourers with tactics both human and alien. They fought with precision and chaos, with advanced weapons and simple determination, with logic and courage. And the Devourers, expecting easy prey, found something unexpected. They found a galaxy that had learned to fight back. They found species that had learned from humanity's example. They found a galaxy that refused to surrender. The battle was hard. Ships were lost. Lives were sacrificed. But the combined fleet won, and this time, they chased the Devourers back into deep space, hunting them across star systems until the threat was eliminated. When the fleet returned home, celebrations erupted across the Concordate. Humans and aliens embraced, crying and laughing together. They had faced the darkness and won. Ambassador Thelnara, now elderly but still serving, stood before the Chen Memorial with Sarah Chen Jr. beside her. "Your mother would be proud," Thelnara said quietly. "She saved us all, not just in that one battle, but by showing us who we could become." Sarah Jr. smiled, touching the monument's cold metal. She always said humans were stubborn. Looks like it rubbed off on everyone else. Is that such a bad thing? No, Sarah Jr. replied. I think the galaxy needed a little human stubbornness. Someone had to teach you all that giving up isn't an option. They stood in comfortable silence, looking up at the statue of the battered Indomitable, still flying forward against impossible odds. Somewhere in the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, humans and aliens worked together, building a future that neither could have achieved alone. The Concordat had gained humanity's courage. Humanity had gained the Concordat's wisdom. And in the darkness between stars, if any threats remained, they faced something they couldn't consume or destroy. The united will of species who had learned that surrender was never an option. The galaxy had learned what humans knew all along. Sometimes the smallest species makes the biggest difference. Sometimes the ones everyone underestimates change everything. Sometimes 317 people can save billions. And sometimes, against all odds and logic and reason, stubborn courage is enough. Humanity, fuck yeah. The sky above New Harmony burned red as another orbital defense platform exploded. Ambassador Zeralex watched from the tall windows of the Emergency Council chamber, her crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the distant fires. She had lived for 342 cycles, but in all that time she had never imagined the end of her civilization would come so swiftly. The reports from the outer colonies are the same, said Council Elder Carix. His voice cracked with age and exhaustion. The Void Swarm has consumed everything in the Cygnus sector. New Harmony is among the last 3 functioning colonies we have left. Zeralex turned away from the window. The Emergency Council, once 50 members strong, had dwindled to just 7. The others had died in attacks or were lost when their home worlds fell. Those who remained looked hollow, defeated. We have one option left, Zeralex said. She placed a small device on the center of the table. It was a simple thing, barely the size of her palm, but it contained the last hope of the Feralian Confederacy. We must send the signal. A murmur passed through the council members. The signal was their final gambit, a desperate plea encoded with the coordinates of their remaining colonies and the sum of their technological knowledge. It would broadcast across all frequencies throughout the galaxy. Who would come? Asked Elder Tizix. The Mandarans refused our call 3 cycles ago. The Vex Collective has sealed their borders. The Krethak withdrew their ambassadors when the Void Swarm breached the Cygnus border. There are other species, Zeralex insisted. Younger, races we have not approached. Too young to help, Tizix countered. Too primitive. We have no choice, Zeralex said firmly. We send the signal, or we face extinction alone. After hours of debate, the vote was cast. The signal would be sent. Zeralex carried the device herself to the planetary communications array, the last one still functional on New Harmony. As the signal initiated, she felt a strange mixture of hope and despair. The message was simple: help us or we perish. The signal spread across the galaxy, passing through the territories of dozens of advanced civilizations. Most received it. All chose to ignore it. The risk was too great, the distance too vast, the enemy too fearsome. All except one emerging spacefaring race from a small blue planet in the Orion Arm. Captain Allison Reed of the Earth Alliance vessel. Intrepid was finishing her daily inspection when the alert came. The Intrepid was not a large ship by military standards, a mid-sized exploration and diplomatic vessel with a crew of 120. They were patrolling the outer colonies, a routine mission that had been uneventful until now. Captain, to the bridge, came the voice of Lieutenant Paul Martinez over the communication system. Reed made her way quickly through the ship's corridors. The crew moved with purpose around her, but she noticed the tension in their movements. Something had happened. On the bridge, Martinez stood at the communications station, his face pale as he worked the controls. "What is it, Lieutenant?" Reed asked as she took her seat in the command chair. "We've picked up a signal, Captain. Unlike anything I've ever seen before. It's coming from several thousand light-years away, from the direction of the Cygnus Arm." "Put it through." The main screen, filled with strange symbols and diagrams, then translated into text as the ship's computer processed the alien language. "It's a distress call," Martinez said quietly. From a civilization calling themselves the Faralian Confederacy. They're being wiped out by something called the Void Swarm. Reed read the message with growing concern. The Faralians had included detailed information about their enemy, a relentless, hive-minded species that consumed all organic life in its path. They had also included star charts, technological specifications, and the coordinates of their remaining colonies. Have any other Earthships picked this up? Reed asked. Yes, Captain, replied Communications Officer Lisa Doyle. Alliance Command has received the signal. They're analyzing it now, but... She hesitated. But what, Officer Doyle? But the preliminary decision is non-intervention. The threat assessment indicates that engaging with this void swarm would put Earth and all our colonies at risk of discovery and attack. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Reed studied the star charts on the screen. The Faralian colonies were, indeed, far away, in a region of space humans had barely begun to explore. How long would it take us to reach the nearest Faralian colony at maximum speed? Reed asked. Navigation Officer Jack Peterson calculated quickly. 27 days, Captain. But Alliance regulations clearly state that we should not engage in... I know the regulations, Officer Peterson. Reed interrupted. I also know that when we founded the Earth Alliance, we swore to uphold certain principles. One of them was to answer distress calls when we had the means to help. Reed stood up and faced her bridge crew. She saw uncertainty in their eyes, but also determination. The Faralians have shared everything with us. Their technology, their knowledge, their vulnerability. They've trusted us with everything they have left. I intend to honor that trust. Science Officer Samantha Gray spoke up. Captain, if I may, the Void Swarm sounds unlike any threat we've encountered. If they've defeated a civilization more advanced than ours, all the more reason they need help, Dr. Gray, Reed replied. Lieutenant Martinez, send a message to Alliance Command. Inform them that the Intrepid is responding to the Faralian distress call under my authority as captain. And if they order us to stand down, Martinez asked. Reed smiled grimly. Then I suppose you'll have to tell them we're experiencing communication difficulties. Officer Peterson, plot a course to the coordinates provided in the Faralian message. Maximum speed. Course plotted, Captain, Peterson confirmed after a moment. Reed took a deep breath. This decision could end her career, or worse, lead her ship and crew to destruction. But she couldn't ignore the plea of a dying civilization when she had the means to answer. Engage, she ordered. The Intrepid changed course, its engines pushing to maximum output as it headed toward the distant stars of the Cygnus Arm. As the ship accelerated to its top speed, Reed wondered how many other civilizations had received the Faralian signal and chosen to look away. In the darkness of space, a single human ship raced toward a war zone that had defeated species far more advanced than humanity. It wasn't much, just one ship with a determined crew. But for the Faralians watching their defenses crumble, it would be the first ray of hope they had seen in years. The humans were coming. Against protocol, against overwhelming odds, against common sense itself. They were coming because someone needed help and they could give it. The journey to Faralian space took 25 days. Captain Reed used this time to prepare her crew for what they might face. The Intrepid was not a warship. It carried only basic weapons and shields designed for minor skirmishes with pirates, or rogue mining operations, not full-scale war. We need to understand their biology, Reed told Dr. Samantha Gray in the ship's lab. The Faralians sent detailed information about themselves. Learn everything you can. Gray nodded as she studied the alien data. Their physiology is fascinating. They have crystalline exoskeletons and 4 arms. They breathe a mixture of oxygen and argon. Their body chemistry is silicon-based rather than carbon-based like ours. Will we be able to communicate face-to-face? Reed asked. Yes. Their atmosphere mix is safe for us with minor adjustments to oxygen levels. And they included their language database in the signal. The universal translator should work with some fine-tuning. Throughout the ship, other preparations continued. Engineer Maria Lopez worked with her team to adapt their technology to be compatible with Faralian systems. Security Officer Steve, Jacobson trained the crew on new defensive tactics based on the information provided about the Void Swarm. Communications with Earth grew strained. Alliance Command had officially ordered the Intrepid to abandon its mission and return to the nearest Earth outpost. Reed had politely acknowledged the order and then continued on course. "They'll court-martial you when we return," Lieutenant Martinez warned her privately. "If we return," Reed corrected him with a small smile. "But some things are worth risking a career for." On the 25th day, the Intrepid dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Nexus Prime system, home to one of the last Feralian colonies. The sight that greeted them was worse than they had imagined. The space around the planet was filled with debris, the remains of defense platforms and ships. The planet itself showed signs of bombardment with huge scars visible on its surface even from orbit. "Life signs?" Reed asked tensely. Officer Peterson checked his sensors. "Yes, Captain, concentrated in underground structures. Several thousand Feralian life forms detected." "Any sign of the Void Swarm?" "Not in this system, Captain," replied Tactical Officer Eric Chen, "but long-range sensors are picking up unusual energy signatures at the edge of the sector. They could be scout ships." Reed nodded grimly. "Open a channel to the surface." After several tense minutes, a response came. The main screen showed a Feralian face. 4 glowing eyes set in a crystalline head structure. Expressions alien, but the shock clearly visible even to human observers. "This is Captain Allison Reed of the Earth Alliance vessel, Intrepid," Reed said clearly. "We received your distress call and have come to offer assistance." The Feralian seemed unable to speak for a moment. When it did, the voice was melodic, yet strained. "I am Elder Carrix of Nexus Prime Colony. You came. We had given up hope that anyone would answer our call." "We're here now," Reed said simply. "We request permission to send a team to your surface to coordinate our efforts." "Granted," Carrix replied quickly. "We will send landing coordinates, but I must warn you, our situation is dire. Void Swarm scouts have been probing our system. A larger attack force will follow soon." Reed turned to Dr. Gray. "Prepare your first contact team. I want you on the surface in 2 hours." The shuttle journey to the surface was tense. Dr. Gray led a team of 6, herself, Lieutenant Jacobson for security, 2 medical officers, and 2 engineers. They landed in what had once been a grand plaza, but was now a partially collapsed emergency landing zone surrounded by rubble. Elder Carrix met them personally, along with a small group of Feralian officials. Up close, the aliens were both beautiful and strange, standing nearly 7 feet tall with crystalline bodies that caught and reflected light in dazzling patterns. Their forearms moved with fluid grace as they greeted the humans with formal bows. "You risk much by coming here," Carrix said as he led them through underground tunnels to the colony's command center. "Your species is barely interstellar. We studied your signal transmissions before sending our call. You have only had faster-than-light travel for 80 of our cycles, less than 50 of your Earth years." "That's true," Dr. Gray acknowledged. "We're young compared to many galactic civilizations." "Then why?" asked a female Feralian who introduced herself as Science Director Mila. "Why would you come when the Mendarans and the Vex Collective, races with thousands of years of space travel, chose to ignore our plea?" Lieutenant Jacobson, normally quiet during diplomatic meetings, spoke up. "Because you needed help, and we could give it." The simple answer seemed to puzzle the Feralians, but they had no time to discuss philosophy. In the command center, dozens of crystal beings worked at control stations monitoring the planet's remaining defenses. "The colony shields are failing," Mila explained, showing them a holographic display of the planet. "We have perhaps 5 days before they collapse completely. Our population is down to 12,000 individuals. Once we numbered billions across 7 worlds." "What exactly are we facing?" Jacobson asked. "Your distress signal mentioned the Void Swarm, but we need more tactical information." Carrix gestured, and a new hologram appeared. A massive cloud of what looked like insectoid ships moving as one organism. "They are a collective consciousness. Each individual drone is part of a greater mind. They consume organic matter and convert it to create more of themselves. They learn and adapt with frightening speed." Back on the Intrepid, Maria Lopez received the data transmitted from the surface team. "Captain," she called to Reed, "I think we can adapt our shield technology to reinforce the colony's defenses, but it would mean taking our ship's shields offline." "Do it!" Reed ordered without hesitation. "Captain," Chen interrupted from tactical, "long-range sensors just picked up multiple contacts entering the system. Comparing to Feralian data, they match void swarm signatures. Scout formation, HFY, least 30 vessels." Reed felt the weight of command more heavily than ever before. They were one ship against an enemy that had defeated an entire civilization. The smart move would be to evacuate as many Feralians as they could carry and retreat. But retreat where? How far would they need to go before the void swarm stopped? Chasing? And what about the thousands of Feralians they couldn't evacuate? Send a message to the surface team, Reed decided. Tell them about the incoming scouts. Then transmit a message on all frequencies used by spacefaring races in this sector. "What message, Captain?" Martinez asked. Reed stood straight, her decision made. "Tell them that humanity stands with the Feralians of Nexus Prime, and we call upon any civilization with conscience to do the same." Captain Reed's message spread across the sector, bouncing from relay to relay. For 3 days there was no response. The Intrepid's crew worked around the clock to reinforce the colony's shields and prepare defenses. The Void Swarm scouts circled the outer system, seemingly gathering information but not yet attacking. On the 4th day, as hope began to fade, the sensors lit up with new contacts. "Captain," Martinez called out, his voice filled with surprise. "We have ships entering the system. 5 vessels of unknown configuration." Reed rushed to the bridge. "Are they Void Swarm?" "Negative," Chen replied from tactical. "Completely different energy signatures, and they're broadcasting on our frequencies." The main screen activated to show an alien face, smooth gray skin with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. "This is Overseer Zal of the Mandarin Shield Fleet," the alien said in a surprisingly musical voice. "We received your transmission, Earth vessel. The Mandarin Conclave has voted to offer assistance." Reed could hardly believe what she was hearing. According to the Feralians, the Mandarins had ignored their pleas for help. "We welcome your assistance, Overseer Zal," she replied carefully. "But I was under the impression that the Mandarin people had chosen non-intervention in this conflict." The alien made a gesture that might have been the equivalent of a shrug. "That was the decision of our previous leadership. Your message was widely distributed among our people. There was significant pressure to reconsider." Before Reed could respond, another signal came through. The new face on the screen belonged to a being that looked like a giant insect, with compound eyes and moving mandibles. "Earth Captain Reed. I am Queen Commander Vextrick of the Collective," the insectoid being clicked. "Your actions have caused much debate among our hive councils. We have decided to deploy our computational battle fleet to your position." Within hours, the system was filled with ships from 3 more species: the gaseous Krithak in their spherical vessels, the aquatic Jural in ships that resembled giant shells, and the plant-based Arbor Communion in living ships grown from massive trees. The Intrepid's small conference room could barely hold all the representatives. Elder Carrick stared in amazement at the gathering of species that had previously abandoned the Feralians. "Why now?" he asked simply. "Why help us now when you refused before?" The Krithak representative, a swirling cloud of gas contained in a mechanical suit, moved forward. "The humans shamed us," it said, its voice coming from a translator device. "They have a fraction of our technology, a fraction of our experience in space. Yet they came without hesitation when we, the elder races, cowered behind our borders. We have been watching," added Vextrick of the Collective. "When the human ship arrived alone, we thought they were simply foolish. But then they began adapting their technology to help your colony. They offered to sacrifice their only vessel to protect people they had never met. Such behavior is unexpected." As the aliens talked, a new alert sounded. Lieutenant Martinez checked his console. "Captain, we're picking up a transmission from Earth direction." The face that appeared on the screen made Reed stand straighter. "Admiral Wilson." "Captain Reed," the Admiral said, Her expression was stern, but there was a hint of something else. Respect, perhaps. "You've violated direct orders and taken the Intrepid into hostile territory without authorization." "Yes, ma'am," Reed acknowledged. "I take full responsibility for my actions." "Good," Wilson nodded. "Because those actions have triggered the biggest diplomatic event in Earth's history. The Feralian distress signal reached us, but our leadership was divided on how to respond. Your decision forced the issue." The Admiral's image widened to show a massive bridge of a much larger vessel. "The 7th Fleet has been mobilized. We're 8 days out from your position with 12 ships and supplies. Earth has formally recognized the Feralian Confederacy and pledged support against the Void Swarm threat." After the transmission ended, the room was silent. Then Elder Carix turned to Reed. "Your people are coming too?" Reed smiled. "Humans can argue endlessly about the right course of action, but once one of us makes a move, others tend to follow, especially when it's about helping those in need." With representatives from 7 species now gathered, a plan began to form. The Mendarans offered their gravity manipulation technology to slow enemy movements. The Vex Collective provided their unmatched computing power to predict Void Swarm tactics. The Krethak shared energy weapon designs that could disrupt the enemy's silicon-based biology. On the colony surface, Dr. Gray worked with Science Director Mila to establish a joint research facility. "The Void Swarm adapts quickly," Mila explained. "Conventional weapons work briefly, then they develop immunity." "Then we need to understand them better," Gray said. She and her team began analyzing the biological samples the Feralians had collected from previous encounters. As they worked, Security Officer Jacobson coordinated with the alien military leaders to organize the defense of the colony. "We need to buy time," he told them. "Earth reinforcements are coming, but the Swarm Scouts have already called for their main fleet. In orbit, Engineer Lopez collaborated with alien technicians to integrate their various technologies. The problem is making all these different systems work together," she explained to Captain Reed. "Each species developed their technology in isolation." "Find a way," Reed encouraged her. "We don't need perfect integration. We just need enough to survive the first wave." The Unlikely Alliance worked around the clock. Species that had never cooperated before found common ground in the face of extinction. Human adaptability proved valuable as they helped bridge the gaps between the vastly different alien technologies and approaches. While the military preparations continued, something unexpected happened on the surface. The aliens began to talk to each other, not just about the war but about culture, philosophy, and history. Mealtimes became impromptu diplomatic sessions, as species that had avoided each other for centuries found themselves breaking bread together. "Your species is strange," Elder Carix told Reed one evening as they watched humans and aliens working side by side. "You have none of our advantages. Not the Mendaran's mastery of gravity, not the Vex's perfect memory, not the Krethak's energy manipulation. Yet you brought us all together when we could not do it ourselves." Reed considered this. "Maybe that's because we're still learning. We don't assume we have all the answers. When we face something we don't understand, we look for help." On the 7th day, the long-range sensors detected a massive energy signature at the edge of the system. "The Void Swarm main fleet has arrived," Chen announced grimly on the bridge of the Intrepid. "Estimated 5,000 vessels, heading directly for Nexus Prime." The Alliance had perhaps 100 ships combined. The odds were overwhelming. Reed opened a channel to all Allied vessels. "This is Captain Reed. The enemy will reach our position in 6 hours. Earth reinforcements are still 30 hours away. We stand together or we fall alone." Across the communication network, alien voices responded one by one. "The Mendaran shield stands with you. The Vex Collective commits to battle. The Krethak illumination joins your defense." As the massive enemy fleet approached, the Allied forces took their positions around Nexus Prime. For the first time in galactic history, 7 different species prepared to fight as one. The Void Swarm approached like a dark cloud spreading across space. Their ships moved together in perfect harmony, thousands of vessels flowing like a single organism. The Allied fleet looked tiny in comparison, barely 100 ships of different sizes and designs arranged in a defensive formation around Nexus Prime. On the bridge of the Intrepid, Captain Reed watched the enemy approach on the main screen. The plan they had created was risky, but it was their only hope of surviving until Earth reinforcements arrived. "All ships report ready," Lieutenant Martinez said from his station. Reed nodded. "Signal the Mendaran vessels to activate their gravity wells." The 5 Mendaran ships moved to predetermined positions and activated their unique technology. Massive distortions in space-time appeared, creating areas where the laws of physics bent and warped. The front section of the void swarm slowed as they hit these invisible barriers. "It's working," Chen reported from Tactical. "The main force is being delayed, but the gravity wells won't hold them for long." "They don't need to," Reed replied. "They just need to break the swarm's formation. Signal the Krethak energy ships to target the separated groups." The spherical Krethak vessels moved forward, their hulls glowing with building energy. They released pulses of blue-white power that tore through the first wave of void swarm ships. Several dozen enemy vessels exploded or drifted powerless. The Vex computational analysis was right, Martinez said excitedly. "The Krithak energy weapons are effective against the swarm's biological components." But the victory was short-lived. The remaining swarm ships quickly changed their approach, altering their shields to absorb the energy blasts. "They're adapting already," Chen warned. "The Krithak weapons are losing effectiveness." "That was expected," Reed said, though her heart sank. "Proceed with Phase 2. Signal all ships to fall back to secondary positions." The Allied fleet pulled back closer to the planet as the void swarm pushed through the gravity wells. The enemy now moved in smaller, more agile groups rather than one mass. On the surface of Nexus Prime, Dr. Gray worked frantically with Science Director Mila in the research facility. They had been studying the void swarm samples non-stop, looking for any weakness they could exploit. "There's something odd about their communication system," Gray said, looking at the data on her screen. "The individual drones send signals to each other through some kind of quantum entanglement, but there's a pattern to it." Mila moved her forearms rapidly, inputting commands to enhance the data visualization. "Yes, I see it too. All commands seem to originate from specific ships, coordinator nodes." Gray looked up suddenly. "That's it. If we can identify and target those coordinator nodes, we might be able to disrupt their hive mind temporarily." She grabbed her communication device. Gray to Intrepid. "We've found something. The swarm has coordinator ships that direct the others. If we can knock those out, it might confuse the rest." In orbit, the battle grew more intense. The Vex Collective, ships with their advanced computing capability, had identified the likely coordinator nodes based on Dr. Gray's discovery. But reaching them wouldn't be easy. "They're protected in the center of the swarm formations," Chen explained, pointing to the tactical display. "We can't get to them with conventional attacks." Security Officer Jacobson, who had returned to the Intrepid from the surface, stepped forward. "What about an infiltration mission? A small, fast ship might be able to slip through their lines." "That would be suicide," Martinez objected. "Not necessarily," Lopez said from engineering. "I've been working with the Krethak energy specialists. We might be able to modify one of our shuttles with their cloaking technology. It wouldn't be perfect, but it might get close enough." Captain Reed considered the options. The main battle wasn't going well. Despite their combined technologies, the Allied fleet was being slowly overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of the void swarm. Several ships had already been destroyed, and others were badly damaged. "Do it," she ordered. "Prepare the shuttle for an infiltration mission. We need volunteers." Jacobson immediately stepped forward. "I'll lead the team, Captain." "I'll go too," Lopez said. "The modifications will be complex. You'll need an engineer on board." 5 others volunteered, 2 human crew members and 3 aliens, a Mendaran gravity specialist, a Vex tactical analyst, and a Krethak energy technician. Together, they represented the first truly mixed-species strike team in galactic history. As they prepared for the mission, Reed addressed the ship. "All units, this is the captain. Our infiltration team will launch in 10 minutes. All ships must create a diversion to cover their approach. This is our best chance to hold out until Earth reinforcements arrive. The shuttle, hastily modified, and renamed Shadow Dancer by its crew, was ready for launch. It was barely recognizable, covered in Krithak energy-absorbing materials and Mendaran gravity distortion devices. Its engines had been enhanced with Vex computational systems to help it navigate the chaotic battlefield. Remember, your primary target is those coordinator nodes, Reed told Jacobson as he prepared to board. If you can disrupt even a few of them, it might give us the edge we need. Jacobson nodded, his face serious. We'll get it done, Captain. The battle reached new intensity as the Allied fleet launched a coordinated attack on the Void Swarm front lines. It was a desperate move, ships charging directly at an enemy that outnumbered them 50-1. But it served its purpose. With the swarm focused on the main attack, the Shadow Dancer slipped away from the Intrepid's shuttle bay and disappeared into the darkness of space. Using the Mendaran gravity technology to bend light around its hull and the Krithak energy-absorbing materials to hide its heat signature, the small ship navigated through the edge of the battlefield. Inside, the mixed crew worked in tense silence. They had trained together for less than 6 hours, yet their lives now depended on perfect coordination. Approaching the first target, the Vex analyst announced, their compound eyes fixed on the tactical display. Enemy coordinator node at bearing 121 by 45. Jacobson guided the shuttle towards the massive Void Swarm ship. Unlike the drone vessels, the coordinator was larger and surrounded by a protective screen of smaller craft. Ready the disruptor, he ordered Lopez. She nodded, finalizing the settings on the weapon they had cobbled together from parts of all 5 species technology. Disruptor charged, but we'll need to get closer, much closer. As they approached the first coordinator node, alarms suddenly blared throughout the shuttle. We've been detected, the Mendaran specialist called out. Enemy ships changing course. To intercept. Jacobson gripped the controls tighter. Hold on, we're going in. The Shadow Dancer plunged toward the heart of the Void Swarm as the main battle raged behind them. The Shadow Dancer raced toward the coordinator node with Void Swarm ships closing in from all sides. Inside the shuttle, the mixed crew worked frantically to keep their systems running. Shields failing, reported the Krithak technician, its gaseous form swirling anxiously inside its containment suit. Lopez's hands flew over the engineering controls, rerouting power from life support. We only need enough air for the next 10 minutes anyway. Jacobson piloted the shuttle through the swarm of enemy vessels, using every trick he had learned in his years of service. The Mendaran gravity specialist created small distortions in space to help them dodge the worst of the enemy fire. We're almost in range, the Vex analyst announced. 300 meters to optimal firing position. A violent impact rocked the shuttle. Warning lights flashed across every console. Hull breach in the rear compartment, Lopez called out. Sealing emergency bulkheads. Jacobson gritted his teeth. Is the disruptor still operational? Yes, but we'll only get one shot. That's all we need. They approached the massive coordinator node, a ship 3 times the size of the Intrepid, covered in strange organic growths and pulsing with eerie light. Smaller Void Swarm vessels swarmed around it protectively. 200 meters, 100, were in range. Lopez activated the disruptor. The cobbled-together weapon drew power from every system on the shuttle, causing lights to flicker and engines to stutter. A beam of energy unlike anything seen before, a combination of human ingenuity, Krithak energy manipulation, Mendaran, gravity distortion, and Vex computational precision, shot from the Shadow Dancer and struck the coordinator node. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the node's pulsing lights faltered. The smaller ships around it suddenly broke formation, moving erratically. It's working, Lopez shouted. Jacobson immediately turned the shuttle toward the next target. We need to hit as many as we can. Before, another impact cut him off. This time the shuttle spun violently as one of its engines exploded. We're losing power, Lopez reported grimly. We can't reach the next target. The Mendaran specialist moved forward. There is another way. If we overload the disruptor and the gravity generators simultaneously, we could create a cascading effect. It would disable multiple coordinator nodes. That would destroy the shuttle, the Vex analyst pointed out. Yes, the Mandarin agreed quietly. It would. Silence fell over the cramped cabin as everyone understood what this meant. There would be no return trip. Jacobson looked at each member of his diverse crew, beings from 5 different species who had never worked together before this crisis. It's your call. We can try to make it back or we can finish the mission. One by one they nodded. For Nexus Prime, the Krethak technician said. For all our peoples, added the Vex analyst. Lopez began the modifications to overload their systems. It will take 2 minutes to set up. After that, we'll have 30 seconds before detonation. Jacobson opened a communication channel to the Intrepid. Shadow Dancer to Intrepid. We've successfully disrupted 1 coordinator node. We're going to take out more, but we won't be coming back. Tell Captain Reed. Tell her it was worth it. On the bridge of the Intrepid, Captain Reed received the message with a heavy heart. Understood, Shadow Dancer. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. She turned to Martinez. Signal all ships. Prepare to attack the moment we see disruption in the swarm formations. The battle had been going badly for the Allied fleet. Nearly 20 ships had been destroyed, and many others were damaged. The Void Swarm continued to advance, adapting to each new tactic the Allies attempted. Then, suddenly, a massive explosion lit up space near the center of the enemy fleet. The blast was unlike anything they had seen before. A strange mixture of energy and distorted space-time that spread outward in rippling waves. The effect on the Void Swarm was immediate and dramatic. Hundreds of ships stopped moving in coordinated patterns and began drifting aimlessly or flying in random directions. Others actually turned on each other, firing weapons at nearby swarm vessels. The Shadow Dancer did it, Chen said quietly. They disrupted the hive mind. Reed stood up. All ships, this is Captain Reed. Attack now while they're disorganized. The Allied fleet surged forward, targeting the confused enemy vessels. The Mandarin ships created gravity wells to trap groups of enemy ships. The Krithek vessels fired energy weapons at the trapped targets. The Vex Collective ships used their computational power to predict which enemy vessels would recover first and prioritize them for attack. For the first time since the war began, the Void Swarm was retreating, not in an organized withdrawal, but in a chaotic, every-ship-for-itself flight. As the Allies pressed their advantage, new alerts sounded on the Intrepid's bridge. Captain, multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, Martinez reported. It's the Earth 7th Fleet. The main screen showed 12 human vessels appearing at the edge of the system, led by the massive dreadnought Dauntless. They immediately joined the battle, their weapons targeting the retreating Void Swarm ships. Within hours, it was over. The remaining swarm vessels had either been destroyed or had fled the system. The Allied fleet gathered around Nexus Prime, battered but victorious. 3 days later, representatives from all 7 species gathered in the Grand Hall of the Feralian colony. The room had been hastily repaired for the historic occasion. Admiral Kate Wilson of Earth stood beside Elder Carrix as they signed the first draft of what would become known as the Galactic Concordat, a mutual defense and cooperation agreement between their peoples. Today marks the beginning of a new era, Carrix said to the assembled delegates. For too long, the advanced civilizations of our galaxy lived in isolation, believing that safety came from avoiding contact with others. The Void Swarm proved that isolation is not safety, it is merely delayed destruction. Admiral Wilson stepped forward. Humanity is young compared to many of you. We have much to learn, but perhaps we have something to teach as well, that we are stronger together than apart. Captain Reed, standing with the surviving members of her crew, felt a mix of pride and sadness. The victory had come at a heavy cost. The Shadow Dancer and its brave crew were gone, along with many others who had fought in the battle. As if reading her thoughts, Dr. Gray touched her arm. They didn't die for nothing, Allison. No, they didn't, Reed agreed. They died to save others, not just their own kind, but beings from worlds they had never even heard of before. Outside the hall, the sky above New Harmony was clear for the first time in years. The orbital defense platforms were being rebuilt, now with technology from all 7 allied species. Ships moved back and forth between the planet and the orbiting fleet, scientists, engineers, and diplomats working together to strengthen their new bonds. In the years that followed, humanity became known throughout the galaxy not for their technology or their military strength, but for something far more valuable: their willingness to help strangers in need. When the call came, only humans had answered, and in doing so, they had taught the older races a lesson they had forgotten. True civilization isn't measured by technological advancement, but by compassion. The Void Swarm would return. Everyone knew that. But next time, they wouldn't face divided worlds fighting alone. They would face a united galaxy, standing together because humans had shown them how.